Well, hello everyone. Welcome. Happy Wednesday. Let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to this Sage Live webinar. My name is Gabe Gotai, Senior Marketing Coordinator at Sage. Today, we're taking a deep dive into band merch and opportunities for promo products in that industry. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping things. I want to let you know that this webinar will be recorded. You'll get an email in the next couple of days with a link to watch that recording if you want to share it with your colleagues who didn't make it today. Today's webinar should last about 30 minutes. All right, we're going to do a couple of venue rules first, too. There will be no stage diving or mosh pits during today's webinar for insurance purposes. If you have any questions during the presentation, Rebecca Brown and Betty Anderson are monitoring the chat. You can go ahead and put those down there. But first, I have a question for you. Go ahead and put your answer in the chat. What was the first concert that you ever attended? So, you also might be wondering, who am I? Why am I qualified to speak on this subject if the long hair wasn't enough credentials for you? For those of you that don't know me, I'm a big fan of all kinds of live music. I play in a small local band in my free time. Before coming to Sage, I worked in a marketing department for a local concert venue here in Dallas. We worked closely with bands when promoting their shows, including a lot of merchandise-based promotions. And beyond my professional and semi-professional life, I have seen hundreds of bands perform in concerts in sold-out arenas, all the way down to tiny local venues and bars. And I love band merch. For many of us, band merch is a badge of honor. It's a calling card to other fans. It's a way to say, I was here. I was at that concert. I heard these musicians in real life with my own 2 ears. I've often ended up having really great conversations with strangers, swapping concert stories, all because of the logo on my shirt. Sometimes people don't even recognize the band, but they have something nice to say because of the great design work that goes into these types of products. I'm the kind of person who, if you tell me that you like my shirt, I'm going to be wearing that shirt at least once a week for probably the next year. So why does this matter for you guys? The live entertainment industry, it's massive and it's growing. There are abundant opportunities for promotional products distributors to do very profitable business. Band merch was a $13.5 billion industry last year. Some of the following slides, I'll show you the numbers behind how we got there. I'm also going to go into the history of band merch. It has a lot to teach us about how we approach the market, from understanding the industry business side to understanding the artist's personalities. And maybe the most important takeaway from this presentation will come from the demo that I'm going to do at the end in Sage Online, which should hopefully drive home the point that promotional products don't have a place in the music industry, but that promotional products are one of the single most important parts of the music industry. Every single promotional piece of band merchandise is a promotional product. You all might be kind of sick of hearing that such and such is back in full force post-COVID, but it's especially true for live entertainment. Sales of merchandise at concerts, as I said earlier, was a $13.5 billion industry in 2022, up 43% from 2019. Last year, there were 44,000 concerts with 121 million attendees, and that was just at Live Nation shows. That's an average of 2,750 people at each show, and 21% of those people purchased some form of merchandise. And those who did purchase merch spent an average of $38.50 each. And that's an average. It represents a wide range of buying behaviors, from those who will spend just a few dollars on stickers and patches to super fans who will walk out of a concert with vinyl records and multiple t-shirts. Breaking it down even further, let's take a look at some of the stats for the merchandise itself. We'll dig deeper into the details of individual promo products a little bit later, but here's the big picture. T-shirts, hats, and pullover hoodies are the top 3 selling items by a wide margin, and shirts make up 51% of all products sold in band merch. Can you guess what over half of those t-shirts are colored? If you've ever bought any band merch, you probably know it's black. And the second highest is white at only 8%. Black makes sense. It's a color that looks good on everyone, goes with everything, and it's less likely to fade with washing. Of course, the downside is that my closet ended up being about 99% black t-shirts. Makes it a little hard to add variety to your daily style. Let's talk about how genre affects merch sales. the popularity of music does not necessarily reflect the popularity of the band merch. Specifically, let's talk about two genres that maybe couldn't be any further apart: country and K-pop. Country music had the highest number of shows in 2022, but it had the lowest total percentage of attendees who purchased merch at only 13%. On the other hand, K-pop currently leads the industry average in average dollar per head, highest average attendance, and the highest percentage of fans who are purchasing merchandise at concerts. All of those industry stats are a great way to get a top-down perspective, but understanding the artist stats, the statistics from their point of view, is going to be critical as you're doing business as a promotional products distributor working with these artists. Did you know that the artists make as much profit from one t-shirt sale as they do from almost 12,000 streams of their songs on Spotify? Bands with a concert capacity of less than 1,500 will make an average nightly income of $5,527 compared to an annual income of only $325 from Spotify streams. The main point to take away from that when you're understanding the artist is that promotional products are not optional or an add-on. If a band is looking to make an actual profit or even just trying to expand their brand and get their name out there, promotional products are a necessity. And more than that, they're going to need to be able to present various products to their audience. 41% of products have at least 15 unique items for sale on their merch table, but 61% of their profits are going to come from the big three: shirts, hats, and hoodies. Hopefully this gives you a little bit of insight into just how much business is being done in this industry. It's maybe something you hadn't considered before. I challenge you just to look up local concerts in your areas, including at smaller venues and bars. You might be surprised just how many of them there are, and all of this business is being done at each of them. You have an opportunity here as a promotional products distributor to step in and be a guide for these bands. Before I move forward, I'm going to take this opportunity to make a quick plug. Those were some really good stats. We all love stats here, but everything that we've been covering today is based off of a really great deep dive guide written by our very own Betty Anderson. It's available on our website. Highly recommend checking it out. There's a link in the follow-up email. You can dig a little bit deeper into these numbers and where they came from. And you can find a whole series of deep dives on sageworld.com by going to our educational resources page. These guides cover various topics and industries, all from the perspective of selling promotional products as a distributor. You need these guides if you're looking for ways to expand your business. They'll help you break into markets that you're not currently taking advantage of. So, covered the stats. A little later, I'm going to do the live demo, show you some practical examples of how to find the right promo products to sell to bands. But before that, I want to take it back to the beginning. I believe that having a fundamental understanding of the history behind band merch is going to make you the best equipped to enter that market today. Let's take a look at who's actually driving the numbers for this merch. It's the fans. Music taste can be a strong source of identity for people. People identify as fans. I'm a fan of the Beatles. I am a fan of the Pixies. Think about the world of sports. From the days of the Romans to the Cowboys on Monday night, fandom has always appealed to a sense of belonging and escapism, something core to the human experience. Think about the Swifties. The Eras Tour was the highest grossing tour in history. It brought in $2.2 billion, and it dominated social media because of the power of her fans. They're a fandom that is so powerful, they have managed to infiltrate the NFL. And she is just the most recent in a world of live entertainment juggernauts whose fandoms dominate the public consciousness. Every decade has seen someone like Swift. There's been Adele, Beyonce, Nirvana, Michael Jackson, Pink Floyd. Before that, the Beatles, who had fans passing out from screaming at their concerts. But that level of fanatical obsession in the music world, or at least in the American mainstream media, goes back to Elvis Presley. Much of the older generation hated Elvis. They hated what he played, and they hated what he represented. His dance moves were considered indecent, and he was playing African-American influenced music in the Jim Crow South. But that hate only spurred on the younger generation, who adored Elvis. He was the king of rock and roll. He transcended boundaries and he had a profound impact on the culture. Elvis's manager, Colonel Tom Parker, recognized the power of his client's image. Parker capitalized on the polarization. He saw an opportunity. He began to make and sell Elvis buttons for people on both sides of the fence, something that comes from political campaigns of the time. And if you hate Elvis, if you love Elvis, didn't matter to Colonel Parker, he was making money. After the initial success of the buttons, Parker made a deal with Special Products Inc. to promote the brand even further. They expanded their offerings to over 30 products that included things like shirts, jeans, sneakers, belts, buckles, bandanas, flags, even Elvis Presley RCA Victrolas, small portable record players. Like I said earlier, the average band has at least 15 items on their merch table. Even at the very beginning of the band merchandise industry, variety was the key to success. By the end of 1957, Elvis was reported to have grossed over $22 million through merchandise sales. Some would argue that while Elvis was the first to do many things in the world of music, the Beatles would soon come and do many of those same things bigger and better. While record keeping was kind of hazy at this point in the Beatles' history, we do know that in 1963, their manager Brian Epstein handled control of the merchandising arm over to Nick Byrne, who leased out the brand's branding and likeness to various companies for just a 10% cut of the profits. By 1964, the factories were churning out Beatles bubblegum, musical instruments, dolls, dresses, even wigs and hairbrushes. Now, those of you really paying attention to me so far might have noticed the conspicuous absence of one particular product. So let's take a brief detour into the history of the most popular band merch item and one of the most popular promotional products overall, the t-shirt. Like most popular American clothing, the t-shirt has very utilitarian origins. It was part of the US Navy uniform during the Spanish-American War, serving as a middle layer. It's cheaply manufactured, easily cleaned, and by the end of World War II, it was very common for men or boys to wear t-shirts as part of their daily uniforms. In 1942, Life magazine featured one of the first graphic t-shirts for a man wearing the Air Corps Gunnery School logo. Marlon Brando was seen wearing one in 1950's A Streetcar Named Desire. But the big turning point for the t-shirt came in 1960, when the first rotatable multicolored garment screen printing machine was developed, something that many of you are probably familiar with. It was initially manufactured to print logos and graphics on the bowling garments, but it turns out that the t-shirt is ideal for screen printing. So it became a canvas, a billboard, and a protest sign. Around that time, there was a gentleman named Stanley Mouse. He was an influential counterculture artist. He designed album covers for many of the big psychedelic bands living in his part of California at the time. In the mid-60s, he started a business called the Monster Company, which used the four-color silk screening process to create a line of t-shirts that featured these bands' art. And in 1966, Mouse and his fellow artist Alton Kelly created a t-shirt for a band that lived right across the street from them in San Francisco, Grateful Dead. Really not sure if there's any other Deadheads in the audience right now, but they are maybe one of the best examples of a band successfully utilizing merchandise, and they certainly had a profound impact on it. The Dead, like Elvis, can attribute much of their success to their role in the counterculture. The full history of how they came to be known as icons of the underground world is a little too long and too inappropriate for this particular webinar. But to be short, by the middle of the 1960s, they were filling rooms and auditoriums where they played for free, and they encouraged their fans to record bootleg tapes of every show. From a business perspective, that seems counterintuitive, to forgo charging for tickets or to encourage piracy instead of recording and selling records. But whatever they lost in royalties, they gained back in profits from t-shirts, posters, and other products featuring the artwork, and they kept 100% of that revenue. Instead of conforming to the established standards of the time, the Dead created a new marketplace. Literally. This is Shakedown Street. It's what the Deadheads commonly call this expanse of trailers and tents that end up showing up in the parking lots of Grateful Dead concerts and concerts for similar bands. Here, fans could buy and sell, among many other things, black market band merchandise. The community of tailgoing partygoers established a culture that forever associated live music with t-shirts. And of course, there will always be bootleg merchandise sold. It's part of the culture. The image of a modern concert is incomplete without someone in the parking lot selling a misspelled version of the band's t-shirt. But like we saw in the stats earlier, on average, enough concert attendees will purchase enough official merchandise to account for the majority of a performer's income. Nearly 30 years after the passing of the Dead's frontman, Jerry Garcia, the surviving members are still touring and selling merchandise. I've seen them twice in the last 3 years at sold-out concerts, and I, like many other people, have the t-shirts to prove it. Not sure if you can see behind me, but I've got the one from their last tour that they did with John Mayer hanging right here. According to Variety, between 2015 and 2020, the Dead were still selling $70 million worth of merchandise every year. And the merch can be an investment for the buyer. That first Grateful Dead t-shirt I showed a moment ago would eventually set the record for the most expensive rock and roll memorabilia ever sold at auction, bringing in over $17,000. Stanley Mouse's designs went on to establish just how important it was for a band to have a unique aesthetic. Mouse's father was an animator at Disney, and he took a lot of that with him. You could imagine that some of the bands we see now have branding just as iconic as anything Disney ever put out there. In 1971, John Pash designed the tongue logo for the Rolling Stones' Sticky Fingers album, and it would become the centerpiece of the band's branding for the next 50 years. To this day, you can find it on t-shirts and posters all around the world. In 2003, VH1 named it the best album cover ever, not necessarily because of its artistic merit, but because of how widespread the image has become in popular culture. According to Adweek, Pash received only £50 sterling for the design. And if anybody feels like that's an injustice, it's okay. He got a £200 bonus. Fast forward just a little bit to 1973, the world is introduced to the iconic KISS logo. Like many great works of art, there was some debate about its origins, but it was created by founding member Ace Frehley, and undeniably the logo has become essential to the band's branding, just as essential as the makeup or Gene Simmons' weird split tongue. Their official fan club, the KISS Army, was reported to have made at its peak over $5,000 every day from selling memberships that included this merch that you see here, these jackets and these pins and these patches. And that was just the fan club, let alone what the band was making on official merchandise. Graphic design is not the only way for an artist to establish a visual identity. In the early 1980s, Michael Jackson began to wear more and more elaborate costumes for his stage performances and music videos. Top fashion designers often designed these costumes, and they helped create a sense of excitement and anticipation around Jackson's music. One of the most iconic pieces of Jackson's wardrobe was the red leather jacket he wore in the music video for Thriller. It became so popular that millions of fans have copied it. To this day, Michael Jackson is still selling millions and millions of dollars of merchandise every year. Clothes, hats, jackets, even dolls and video games and fast food. Moving forward to the next decade, the 90s was another time of significant growth for the music industry due to a couple of factors, including the rise of grunge music and the popularity of boy bands and girl groups. The smiley face logo, now synonymous with Nirvana, was originally just a doodle that was on a poster for a private party for them releasing their album. But after the explosion of that record, Nevermind, the image became a core part of the band. You can buy this at Walmart today. Another major milestone of the 90s, like I said, was boy bands and girl groups. Bands like Backstreet Boys and NSYNC and Spice Girls created massive followings, millions of fans all over the world eager to buy their merchandise. The Backstreet Boys, after they released their debut album, have since generated over $500 million in merch sales, and the Spice Girls have generated over $1 billion. Technological advances of the 90s and the 2000s also accelerated the growth of band merch. The development of new technologies, such as digital printing and sublimation printing, made producing high-quality merchandise more efficient and cost-effective than ever. But most importantly, the rise of the internet came along and made it easier for fans to purchase merchandise from their favorite artists. Today, countless companies specialize in helping bands set up online merchandise sales. The launch of iTunes in 2000 made it easier for fans to purchase and download music, but it led to a huge decline in physical music sales, and it created a new opportunity for music merchandise sales to make up that difference. The rise of digital streaming services like Spotify and Pandora in the late 2000s only compounded that trend. And then there was the birth and growth of social media platforms like Facebook and Twitter, made it easier for artists to connect to their fans and promote their merchandise. And maybe most importantly, the increasing popularity of online retailers like Amazon and eBay, making purchasing merchandise from anywhere in the world easier for fans. Spotify has jumped in on this themselves. They just put out a new way for artists to sell their merchandise through the Spotify app to try to help make up some of the difference in what they're not making from their streaming. All right, we're almost at the fun part where I'm going to do the live demo in Sage. But first, I just want to talk about some creative promotional products being used by artists. Today, merch can come in all shapes and sizes. It's not just about taking away memorabilia from the show. It can be about merging it with the concert experience. For example, light sticks have become extremely popular among K-pop fans. They light up stadiums just like people used to do with lighters. There's variations all across the product spectrum for a product like that too. You can find the cheaper items for bands that don't have a big budget, all the way to the more expensive lighting products can synchronize a light show through Bluetooth to turn the audience into part of the concert. Speaking of wearables, merch has expanded beyond the typical t-shirt and hoodie. Bands like Metallica partnered with Vans, so you can find backpacks and jewelry. Action figures have found a place. Toy brand Super 7 produces a line of action figures for bands like the Notorious B.I.G., the Beastie Boys. Funko has a line of rock pops that span all genres of music, from Tupac to Willie Nelson to Iron Maiden. Food and drinks aren't off the table either. Snoop Dogg has Cali Red, Cali Rose, and Cali Blanc wines with the band 19 Crimes. Martha Stewart also has a brand. Can you guess which one of them has been to prison most recently? The snack brand Rap Snacks has chips, popcorn, lemonade, and noodles, all from rappers. Some artists have been popular for so long that they've had to evolve their merch with their image. Snoop Dogg's a great example of that. In his later years, he's skewed away from his gangster rap persona, and he's released albums of children's songs and published a cookbook that I know at least 2 different Sage employees own. You can also promote kits. Kitting is a huge trend for the promo industry, but the music industry has been taking advantage of this type of merchandising for several years. Kitting is the strategic packaging of multiple promo products that fit into one event or theme. An example a lot of you are familiar with probably is the canvas bags that are already filled with promo products that you get after you check in at trade shows. Another example in the music industry is anytime you purchase VIP tickets for a concert, you'll usually get a clear tote bag filled with stickers, shirts, hats, flags, and more. Not to mention, you'll get ID products, specially printed lanyards and a laminate to show off your VIP status, letting you into the restricted areas like the pit or backstage. You could also use kitting to fit unique and useful promo products. Custom umbrellas are a great idea for outdoor shows, many of which are rain or shine. Don't get me wrong, jamming out to your favorite band while getting drenched on the lawn at Dos Equis Pavilion in Dallas can be a great memory, but I would have rather it was a dry memory. Or hand fans. These are increasingly popular, especially if you live in places like Texas. They're cheap, rechargeable, and you can bring them with you anywhere. So how do you tap into the band merch industry? Support your local artists. Lots of smaller artists and bands are trying to make it in the music scene. Especially today, a lot of those bands are trying to make it outside of the traditional avenues. They don't necessarily want to get signed. They want to make it on their own and control their brand and make money. As a distributor, you can help fill this gap by guiding them, helping them find their image, and helping them find unique promo products. Let's go ahead and jump on over to Sage, and we'll take a look at some great promo products that you can turn into band merch. Like I mentioned earlier, light sticks, LED bracelets have grown in popularity. They're a great option as they add something to the concert experience itself. It's not just a memento for afterwards. And like I said earlier, the more expensive models can be synced up to create a whole new experience at the show. Beach balls are another great way to add to the concert experience. Send a handful of them into the crowd and turn the show into a party. The beach balls that survive the night will become treasured memorabilia for some lucky fans who decide to take it home. Hand towels, they're a great addition to the live experience. Back to sports, for example, the Dallas Stars, I know in the last couple of years have given out towels during the playoff games for people to wave around every time they score. But today, in a concert experience, they're much more practical for wiping off sweat or cleaning up spilled drinks. You could use higher end wearables. You can find Chuck Taylor's, official Converse brand Chuck Taylor's in Sage. And I don't know anybody that owns is a music fan that does not own a pair of Converse. Beverage insulators, extremely popular. Turns out that there is a little bit of a crossover between drinkers and music fans. It's not, you don't have to be a drinker to enjoy music, but those environments tend to cross over. And koozies and coolies are an excellent way to cheaply and easily give out products that get the band's name out there. Guitar picks. Guitar picks are an excellent item for bands of any size. If it's a larger, very famous artist, guitar picks are a collector's item. They'll throw them out at the show, somebody will get it, and they'll keep it in there safe for the rest of their life. But even smaller, less popular artists can get a great value out of these. They're affordable, and they get your logo everywhere. There's a local bassist in Dallas named Patrick Smith. He gives out these giant bass picks at shows, and you can find them everywhere. If you're in the local music community here, you've probably seen them. You'll end up having conversations with people that also know him. He plays sold out shows a couple of times a week now because he's made himself a brand. And for the last part of the demo, how many of you are familiar with the Sage Idea Wizard? This is new AI technology in Sage that can really help you find the ideas you're looking for. Talk to it like a human and ask it for ideas. I'm going to type in here, a local band is looking for creative merch to sell and give away. It's going to take a minute to think, but think about how long it would take you if I gave you just that one sentence to give me a complete list of creative ideas and then give me a link to those things in Sage. And you don't have to be as specific as what I just did. You can type in all kinds of things and see here, pulls up all kinds of great ideas. Some of things are things we already talked about, and you just click search and it takes you right to it in Sage Online. All right, that's going to be just about it for the presentation. But what I want you to take away from this is that band merch is here to stay. Live entertainment is a huge industry and it's projected to rise continuously. As promotional products distributors, you're missing out on a steady and growing market if you're not doing business with bands and venues. I really hope that this webinar gave you some perspective on the industry and gave you some practical takeaways to start breaking into this business today. If you want more information, check out the deep dive guide, or you can talk to your Sage account executive. All right. Thank you all so much, and I hope you all have an excellent day.